Hello, I am Mani Malarvanan. In this video, we will look into AI Sentinels, the next evolution in crypto security. So there are a lot of challenging and interesting researches going on how AI has been integrated, how AI can be integrated into crypto. Either it's crypto wallet or blockchain network or DeFi protocols. So there's a lot of research going on. And in the last couple of videos, we talked about how AI and crypto can be integrated. And then we also discussed about AI agents. In this video, we will look into the AI Sentinels, how we can use AI tools and technology to monitor our wallet, monitor the blockchain, monitor the DeFi applications so that our assets and our investment can be protected. So starting from 2017, there are various attempts has been made and they successfully removed customers' wallet. They drained the customer wallet. They had a phishing attack to gain access to the customer wallet and drain the entire money from their wallet. And also there are multiple attempts made and they successfully bad actors removed money from various blockchain attacks. So there's a lot of things going on. So it's very difficult for a single human being or a set of teams to monitor what is going on in the massive crypto networks because as you all know crypto transaction is 24/7, so there is no way you can have a team. Even if you have team working in multiple countries in 24/7, it's not possible to identify and watch all the transactions and then identify fraudulent one and protect the customer before it happens. So we will see how AI Sentinels can be used to mitigate the risk and if not completely avoid, we can able to see how we can able to drastically reduce these type of fraudulent transactions. So what are sentinels? Sentinels continuously monitor blockchain activity, user wallet activity, and identify if it is a normal transaction or if it is a fraudulent transaction. So it based on all the previous transaction patterns it identified, it can able to successfully detect the fraudulent transactions or transactions that are suspectful, and even before it executes, it protects, it stops it so that the customer data and the customer money can be protected. So it can be deployed in multiple different places. For example, at the edge, we can able to have AI Sentinel monitoring users crypto wallet so that anytime it has, if it tries to ask your permission to accept a massive transaction amount draining your entire wallet, then it can protect it and it won't even if you say yes, it's not going to allow you to do the transaction. So those type of technologies can be incorporated within the wallet even before the transaction begins. It can be protected. So that is the first step. In the second step, in flight, say you accepted, somehow the sentiment missed it and then it is coming through a blockchain network. During that in flight, it can be tried to see even before the transaction commits. Within that memory, it can able to identify, a sentinel can be able to scan all the transactions that are waiting to be committed and identifies the fraudulent one, and it can be removed or it can put it in a separate account or separate user address so that it can be actively researched by the Sentinel to find out if it is a fraudulent transaction or not. If it is a fraudulent transaction, then it can be protected altogether. And you will, as a user, you will send a notification saying that it looks like a fraudulent transaction, then that should be avoided. It just like how you use your credit card. Whenever you use a credit card that doesn't follow your normal buying pattern, then you get an email from your credit card company or from your bank asking you, are you the one who authorized? Sometimes they ask you to call you. And then if you say that you are the one, then they are going to accept the transaction. Or They say that if you say that you are not the one, then they are going to ask you to change your credit card, change your password, or whatever you have to do. So they will make sure that the fraudulent transaction never happens. Similarly, that is going to be possible in the blockchain because the blockchains are massive networks working on multiple different blockchains interconnecting. The transaction flows from one blockchain to another blockchain, and then the transaction also happens from your wallet to blockchain, wallet to wallet, and all those complicated transactions. If you really want to monitor, you definitely need to integrate AI Sentinels so that it can able to monitor. And then the other option for us is to, even if the in-flight is missed, whenever within the on-chain, it can able to monitor. We can have AI agents, monitoring agents can track, and it can able to identify if it is a suspicious transaction, then it has hooks to completely avoid committing the transaction in the blockchain. Because once the transaction is committed, it's very difficult to revert the transaction. Some blockchain doesn't even allow because of the security risks and all the mathematical algorithms that has been used to implement the smart contract in various blockchains. And also, it's possible to do the off-chain loop. See, the transaction monitoring for the exchange. Once the transaction is committed in one network, the monitoring systems, the agents can able to monitor where the fund goes into another network even before that transaction commits in a different network that can be backed. So between two networks or two blockchains, if one blockchain commits the transaction, when the transaction reaches the another network, the Sentinel can detect it and avoid it so that the transaction can be stopped. The fraudulent transaction can be stopped. So we can able to deploy the Sentinels in various phases within the entire blockchain ecosystem to avoid fraudulent transactions that happens. So how AI Sentinels work? The AI Sentinels work by three main pillars. So the first one is the feature extraction. It's basically it identifies all the noises, that is the blockchain transaction data, and identifies the signal out of it. It's almost 90, 95%, 98% of the transaction is going to be normal ones. But the challenge is to identify one or two transaction or one or two percentage of transaction fraudulent transaction. Even in that, not all of them is going to be fraudulent because it's very difficult to completely identify only the fraudulent transaction. Sometimes there might be a false positive happens. So the main challenge for AI Sentinels to use the feature or go and identify, read, and understand all the previous transactions that happens in a particular blockchain network, all the good transaction versus bad transaction, and then identify the pattern, how the bad transaction looks and how the good transaction looks, and then use that to understand so that in the future any bad transaction that happens it can able to identify. So that is the first step. And then in the second step, contextual learning. So contextual learning is basically if you are using a chat GPT, then you need to provide a context for your prompt. So that's all the Sentinels need, that what exactly the context that it is going to use it and trying to identify a fraudulent transaction. For example, it needs to have the token address, it needs to have the protocol, and it needs to have all other informations like, and also it needs to have a user wallet behavior from the past experience, past transactions, whether the user is frequently transacting small amount or large amounts and medium amounts from their wallet, all the information it collects, and then it uses as a context to identify if a transaction is fraudulent or a good transaction. And then it provides the guardrails. So the guarded response basically is that if there is a fraudulent transaction is going to happen, it needs to, first thing it needs to identify and protect, and also it needs to block it so that the users would be notified that particular transaction has been blocked so that they know what they need to do. Say, for example, they can able to set up in a real time what is the maximum transaction limit they can have from their wallet. So based on that, it can identify whether a transaction is originated from the wallet is a fraudulent one or a good transaction. Say, for example, if there is a limit, you set it up to have only $10 transaction fee. And then if there is a transaction that starts from your wallet without the wallet owner's knowledge, then it is very easy for Sentinel to identify that the user didn't even accept any transaction greater than $5 or greater than the transaction amount it's set in their wallet. So it can identify and it can completely block the transaction. So there's a lot of techniques the Sentinels can do to identify and learn and avoid the bad transaction. So real world impact where the Sentinels are winning, uh, putting it in the wallet even before the user authorizes a transaction, then the Sentinels can identify and completely avoid fraudulent transaction that starts from the wallet, because any transaction that happens from the customer's point of view that starts from the wallet, if we can able to protect that, then the transaction doesn't even go to multiple different layers, so that we can completely avoid any fraudulent transaction that originates from the wallets. And then in the DeFi protocols, there are on-chain agents are deployed that continuously monitor various components within the blockchain. It monitors the pool balances, the wallet prices, and then the Oracle readings, and all those integrations can be used to identify if a transaction is a fraudulent one or the real one. For example, if somebody is creating a multiple small transaction chunks within a span of a minute or maybe over a period of 1 day, then it can identify that is a pattern that is suspectful, and then there's a more alerts has been sent to identify and protect those type of transactions, because there's a lot of time fraudulent bad actors can create multiple small transactions to in a pool of tokens, and they can able to use that to drain the wallet or drain the smart contract balance, and then they move into their own personal accounts, personal wallets. So all those are all possible using the Sentinels technology if AI has been successfully used and implemented. And then in the exchanges, continuous risk scoring, it can stop, it can monitor various transactions, it can score the risk threat using various analyses, and anytime the risk score goes more than 75% or more than 80%, then it stops the transaction. Even if it is the false positive, it is better to protect than allowing the transaction and finally draining the smart contract balance. So those are all right now the companies are working on, or it's already been implemented in many cases. And then in the bridges and roll-ups, so understanding the bridge invariants and the dispute windows, so using those technology, those windows, it's possible for Sentinels to identify bad actors and then stop the suspicious transactional batches that happens through various automatically monitoring and avoiding the transactions before it happens. So the four layers of a defense model. Uh, so we can able to implement this a four-layer defense model using AI Sentinels in any crypto network. Uh, the first it start with the pre-transaction. That's what we talked about early. How we can able to set the use the Sentinels in the wallet from the customer's point of view before the transaction that starts. It checks all the previous transaction that happens for that particular customer, and then sees and identifies if there is a transaction that is going to start, so that if it feels that it is a bad transaction, then it can completely avoid before the transaction starts and reaches the blockchain networks. So that is the topmost layer. And then in the second layer, the inflate, yes, for some reason, the wallet sentinels couldn't identify a fraudulent transaction in the wallet, then it reaches to the memory pool within the blockchain. It's basically, it waits for the transaction to commit. In that time, then the agents that are deployed in the smart contract within the blockchain, it can able to quickly check all the waiting transactions and identify if a transaction is fraudulent. If it identifies it's a fraudulent, then it will be removed even before it commits the transaction. So that is the second layer that we can able to use it to identify. Say it misses the second layer, and then it comes to the on-chain. So there are lightweight agents that can track within the protocol level and then identify if it is a fraudulent transaction, then it can use the global kill to completely kill the transaction so that that transaction can be avoided. So that is on chain. And then in the off chain, so the transaction monitoring can continuously monitor all the off chain transaction and then use it to identify if there is any fraudulent transaction. And if it happens based on the previous transaction patterns, then it can be avoided. So we need to make sure that we can able to use the AI Sentinels in all the layers so that we can able to avoid all those data points where a transaction originates and where it ends, and ultimately stop the transaction wherever we can able to stop the transaction using AI Sentinels. So the breaking attack chains, see there are, let's see the real scenarios how we can able to use the attack. So there are multiple ways a blockchain can be attacked and it can drain the user's wallet. The allowance drain. So the attack user grants unlimited spending malicious decentralized application. Sometimes as a wallet owner, you get a lot of requests to attach your wallet to a specific decentralized application. If you are not smart enough, or if you are not uh, knows the technology how it works, then there is a possible that you may attach your wallet to a malicious decentralized application, and it can able to retrieve drain all your wallets based on the informations you provide to the decentralized application. So for that, the best defense is to have a wallet caps and then the approval to transaction amount limits, flags contract as a high risk contract even before it connects to the decentralized application. It can go and check what type of decentralized application, whether it is established one, or if the decentralized application is a newly created and deployed into the blockchain. It can able to identify all those and how many transaction happened previously on that decentralized application. It can able to identify all those and then completely protect you from draining your wallet, because it happened multiple times. Multiple times the users are connected to a bad decentralized application, and then it completely drained all the money from the wallet, because your wallet is what you have all the money that you own within your private token. So if any time a decentralized application owns it, then it can able to create attacks and it can able to drain it. So these are all the some of the techniques that the AI Sentinels can do to protect your wallet. And then the flash loan price swing. See, in this case, the attackers are pushes the small volume of transaction into the pooling networks, and they can able to exploit it and try to use it to drain the pool and move the money to their own wallets. So that's also another type of attack. So the defense mechanism for this is to have an on-chain monitor that sees the price and liquidity diverge. Anytime there is a drastic mismatch that happens, it can able to see it and it can able to identify, it can able to completely avoid exploiting the those issues. So that's also been started in the on-chain monitoring side of it. And then in the third, the bridge replay. So in this case, the attackers exploit the accounting bug. If there is any accounting bug, if they identify within the your smart contract application that is being deployed in a blockchain, then they can able to use it to exploit it, and then they try to drain the all the money from that particular smart contract application. So for this, there are a lot of defense mechanisms that can be adaptable to avoid these type of attacks. The cross chain watchers, it spots the anonymous batch attack that happens, or anonymous batch type of transaction that is going to happen within the network, and try to identify those are all fraudulent transaction. It completely avoids those transaction, and probably put all those transaction into a separate network or in a separate token, so that it can be managed and it can be identified and managed without committing into the main blockchain. And then in the fourth one, the governance capture. So this attack happens during the voting time. See, there's a lot of blockchains, they have a voting type system. If you own a certain number of tokens of the blockchain, then you have a voting right. Sometimes you may have a coordinated attack from 20 different blockchains, those who own large amount of tokens for that particular blockchain. It tries to turn the change the rules of the blockchain network by pretending that it's all coming from legitimate wallets. And these type of attacks can be identified, and it can be protected also by using various technologies that is being developed by various companies. So measuring the success. So we all know that the AI and crypto has been integrated. So the question is how successful these AI sentinels are going to be. It's all the technology is started, and it is going to take a lot more time and effort to get mature. So these are all some of the measuring data points we can able to use to measure the time to detection. See, this is a very critical one. The time the transaction starts, and then the time the AI Sentinel successfully detects it is a fraudulent transaction, that is going to be critical. If we can able to identify within seconds, within nanoseconds, then we can able to protect the customer's wallet, and also we can able to protect the blockchain transactions, blockchain dollar amount that is being stored in the uh, smart contract application that are deployed in blockchain. And then the time to action. So once you detect what you are going to do, are you going to let it go, or are you going to take a action before the transaction commits? So that is the second data point we can able to identify and monitor. And then the third point is the false positives. No matter what we do, there will be false positives. Some good transaction will be identified as a as a fraudulent transaction. So how much it is going to be? See, if all the normal transactions are going to be identified as false positive, then you are not going to get good rating from the customer, because customers would be not happy that all the transactions are identified. So the goal is to make sure that we can able to identify only fraudulent transactions. In reality, that's not possible. So there might be some good transaction can be identified as a false transaction, but the goal should be less than 1%. So this gives a good indication how well the AI sentinels are working and identifying the fraudulent transactions and letting go all the normal and good transaction. So and then the TVL coverage. So the total value limit, how much we can able to protect, we can able to save from all the fraudulent transaction. That could be a good indication of how well the AI sentinels are working. So there are a lot of these technologies are started, and as you all know, there are multiple different blockchain networks are available, and there are transactions are happening 24/7. So the technology will mature, and eventually we can able to use the AI Sentinels to completely avoid any fraudulent transactions, or probably we can make it as a uh, we can make it in such a way that the bulk of positive good transaction will go through, and it can able to protect the customer wallet and also the blockchain that has been deployed in various networks. So the next 12 months is going to be a lot of challenges for integrators and the software developers and blockchain developers to use the AI technology to create AI sentinels to protect customers' wallet, to protect their blockchain networks. So there are various companies are working on creating the wallet-based security products, and that can be integrated to a customer wallet so that it can identify and avoid the transaction being created from the customer wallet if the transaction seems to be a fraudulent one. And also, there is a private order flow expanse. Apps can be used to monitor and avoid all the transaction points that goes through. For example, a transaction can go to multiple different blockchain networks, and then finally it completes the transaction. So when a transaction starts, it can able to monitor where the transaction goes, which blockchain it goes, which on-chain it goes. And finally, before it commits, it can able to identify, and if it feels that it is a fraudulent transaction, it can avoid committing the transaction in the blockchain network. And in the protocol safety books that can be developed within the blockchain networks and that can be used to identify fraudulent transaction and can be avoided. And then the cross layer signal sharing, because if you have two networks trying to connect each other. And in that case, the customer transaction can go from one network to another network. So if the both networks can share their data, then both networks, the sender network and the receiver network, can be use the data to analyze and then avoid the transaction that can happen in the source network and also in the destination network. If the source network identifies, then it can stop that. But if the source network couldn't identify and it comes to the destination network can identify and can able to avoid that transaction. And also the explainability as a feature. So this is very critical for any AI based product. You need to know how it works and why a particular transaction was identified as a fraudulent transaction. So it needs to log all the data so that later on for auditing purpose, we can able to go and identify why certain transaction has been flagged as a fraudulent transaction and understand it, and also it can help for auditing and regulatory purposes. So its bottom line is unsurprisable is achievable, but it's not 100% guaranteed. But definitely we can able to avoid multiple fraudulent transactions that happens that can drain a user's wallet or that can completely drain the blockchain network's particular token, particular smart contract that's being deployed. So there are a lot of innovation, there are a lot of activities going on. There's a new innovative products are coming up using how the AI can use the massive amount of blockchain data to understand the pattern and identify how we can able to stop the fraudulent transactions. So that's all I want to discuss in this particular video. If you have any questions or comments, please let us know. You can post a comment or you can send us an email. You can learn more about our company analytic.com, where we have Web 2 and Web 3 based analytical solutions. In there, we have we can you can use it to analyze the data to identify if there is any security risks are there for your blockchain network. Right now, we are working on the Ethereum blockchain, so you can able to use it. But we are also working on other blockchains. In the future, you can able to use many blockchains. But for now, if you have any transaction that you need to identify in Ethereum blockchain, you can use our tools. You can go to dpa.analytica.com, register yourself, and log in and start using our products. Thank you. Appreciate your time. Bye.